closing order at 11:31. Communication and pledges.
Yes, sir. I just want to say good morning to the board and welcome to this board work session that we call our April 6th Run Bag. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Roger Campo, who's going to lead us in the invocation followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, sir. All right. Lord, we place our work and ourselves into your hands. Anoint our creativity, our ideas, and our energy. When we are challenged, guide us, and when we are weary, energize us. May the work that we do and the way that we do it bring hope, life, and courage to our community at Southwest ISD. Bless our administration with wisdom and discernment, our employees with commitment and compassion. In your name we pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Campo.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any public comments? No. Do we want to take a break and?
Yes, thank you for remembering that. I forgot already. I want to grab your lunch.
Oh.
Take a 5-minute recess and come back.
Okay.
So we're going to start with that budget work. Probably about 30 minutes. Hopefully a little faster. Yeah, picture is like the river. I'll try. There you go. All right.
Well, the last time we met, I came and as the year went on, we have 6 weeks reports, called the superintendent report, where we get our attendance and all our data that I track, and I put in a formula to see where our revenue is tracking. Big part of the budget, there's 2 sides. You got your revenue side, you got your expenditure side. As the year goes on, we track both, but the most important one is the revenue, because you want to make sure that you are bringing the revenue that you're expected, so you don't overspend on your expenditure side. The last time we talked, that deficit based on our data was about $10 million, and I was trying to figure out ways to mitigate that. A lot of strategies in place. Talked about ESSER funds, talked about fund balance, and we were talking briefly about hopefully getting some kind of benefit, some kind of, it's not a horse harmless, but some kind of the state stepping in and helping school districts. And I don't know if you got a chance to hear, but the governor did come out, and then TA did come out with a solution. And it's a new operational minutes adjustment. And basically what it is, it takes our 1920 percentage rate, and it applies it to our first 4 to 6 weeks of this school year. And so instead of using our current data, our current percentage rate, which is roughly around 88% for the first 4 to 6 weeks, we were able to use our 1920 percentage rate, which was around almost 94%. So I'm able to apply that to all our data and to our demographics to come up with the difference. And I'm going to share that with you. That's the big part of today's presentation. And so this is an adjustment for this first 4 to 6 weeks. It's called the targeted percentage rate. And then, just like I said on top, it's based off year 1920, 2019 and 2020. There's the formula. So if you're interested in the formula that the state put out there, they never make a formula that's easy. So you can see there, it's the total days present divided by total membership, and then the total days present versus eligible days, and versus ineligible days, and so you can use all your tracks. I'm not going to get into the details, but this is a sample calculation that they gave us, and so this is straight from TEA, and it's basically, here's your first to fourth 6-week average, your ADA, there's your attendance rate, and then there's your 5th and 6th, and then there's your target rate. So you can see that this district had a rate of 89% in the first 4 to 6 weeks of this school year, but back in 1920 they were sitting at 92%. So they're able to apply this rate instead of using this rate. So there's an adjustment that's made. We I make the adjustment within my own templates, but this won't be adjusted for us until settle up, which is probably near settle up, which is probably in September. And I'm gonna talk about what settle up means for some of you that may not know what that means, because it's kind of a big deal for the district. And so what this does not do, it does not take care of enrollment issues. So any districts that have lost enrollment, even this school year or last school year, this is not a hold harmless. Previously, the hold harmless took care of you. If you were, your ADA and your enrollment was down, the state stepped in. 1 year they used ESSER funds, last year they used the hold harmless. But this does not fix any decline in enrollment. So even though if we were expecting to have 13,500 kids and we have 13,200, that's not going to help us on the enrollment side. It also does not extend to the 5th and 6th 6 weeks, not yet. So right now, if an outbreak happens, another COVID outbreak, hopefully, knock on wood, it doesn't, maybe they'll come back and adjust it for the full year. But right now, this is just for the first 4 to 6 weeks. I talked about settle up. And I put up here an example, and it's in your document, and it's a little harder to see up here. But when a district projections, and so I have to submit projections 2 years out for the legislators. So when the legislators are going into session, they ask school districts to predict your future. How many students are you going to have enrolled? What is your ADA going to look like? How many special ed kids are you going to have? And so we use trend data to do that. So just like all districts, our trend data has really gone a different way because we really don't have good trend data now because of the pandemic. So what happens is they take that data and they build a budget for your school district. So they use what I gave them before the legislative session. They pass the legislative session, they pass a budget, and they say, Southwest ISD, we're going to give you $95 million based on your projections. And so throughout the year, that year, they pay me this money. Well, as we submit pink submissions, and we give them real data, they start looking at it and saying, hey, you got underpaid or you got overpaid. And the way they fix that is they call it a settle-up process. And the settle-up process really doesn't begin until next September. So for this school year, if I predicted that like I said, we had 12,488, they're probably going to overpay us this school year. So the financial burden that's going to hit our books is not going to be this school year, it will be next year. Because they're going to pay us the money. But then next September, they're going to go in and they're going to put our real data in there. And in the settlement process, they're going to say, next year, we're going to cut you by $5 million because we already paid you that $5 million last year. So that's the settlement process. So this is an example. This happened to us in 2019 and 2020, in our foundation payment, you can see in September, they made an adjustment to us. And so they settled up with us because they overpaid us by $2 million. At that time, we didn't even need the funds. Most of it wrote in the fund balance, so it didn't impact us financially because they overpaid us, which it was more funds than we needed. And so them cutting us $2 million didn't impact that budget for the next fiscal year. We're in a different scenario now where we're in a deficit budget. We started with a deficit budget, so any funds that we don't have really will hurt the budget as the year goes on, and that can make us dig a deeper hole next year. And so we'll have to be mindful as we move forward in that. And so I just wanted to bring up what the settlement process is, because fiscally this year will be sound, because they're going to pay us based on those projections. But come September, I'll bring the settle up, and you'll see what the state says they overpaid us and how much they settled up on us.
Do you have any idea what that number might be?
I do. And there's some variables, and so I'll explain the variables. And so, we have some great partners, Mo Casey, and we have the Region Center that tries to figure out, okay, well, how's the state going to calculate this for all school districts? So they gave us this great template. And I'll start with the first column. So I took our first 6 weeks data. I have to put in the days membership. Basically, how many days were the kids expected to be here based on our enrollment. Total days present, how many kids showed up every day. And that gives us our total refined ADA for the first 6 weeks. So you can see there that I was projecting overall at 12,400 kids, and it was almost 1,000 students off. And so that's the first 6 weeks. So you can see our first 6 weeks percentage was at 90%, little under 91%. And then in the same column, I did the second 6 weeks, the third 6 weeks, and the fourth 6 weeks to give us our average. So that next line item at the bottom where it says percent attendance for the first and 4 6 weeks from 21-22, our average attendance rate was 88.5%, which is well below what the state says that they're going to use that we had in 1920. So our 1920 rate was 90, almost 94%. So in an average year for refined ADA and how much we get paid from the state, we're roughly around 94 to 95% of ADA, which is, it's not the highest and it's not the lowest, we're kind of in the middle. It'd be great if it's higher, the higher that number is, the more funds we can receive. Also, it helps students get new classrooms, all that stuff. And so, the last 2 6 weeks, this is the variable I was talking about. So I can put this number in there and see what the preliminary revenue is going to be. But we still have 2 more 6 weeks to go. And so the idea and the predictability of what that number is going to be is important. And so what I did for now, just so I can run a scenario, is I took our highest 6 weeks average, this 11.6, and I put it in the last 2 6 weeks. Hopefully this is a lot higher. Hopefully we're in the 12 because COVID's over, kids are coming back. But historically, the 5th 6 weeks has been good to us, but the 6th 6 weeks it has not, attendance-wise. It's the end of the school year, kids start missing, kids start, and so it could be a balance. And so we are meeting with principals and talking to principals, especially certain campuses that are having attendance issues still, on how we can make this number higher, because it will help us financially, obviously it'll help us academically with students in the class. So if I take all those 6 and I get that average, and then we use the 93.9% rate, that'll give us an average end of the year of 11.8, which is a little bit higher than, obviously a lot higher than the 11.2 that I was using previously. So how does that look on paper? So I'm going to start with the first top side. These columns are based on, this is the funding source, the tiers that we set up, and I'll go through those. The next column over is our final data from last year. How did we end last year so we have something to compare to? The next column says proposed budget. This is when we went into the school year saying this is the money we're going to raise based on our average daily attendance and our revenue. And then that says 4 to 6 weeks data is what our actual data is without state helping us. And then the last column is where the state steps in and helps us. And so you can see the difference across the board. Really looking at that the original data that I showed you last month of that 77 million. And this top item here, this top box is strictly foundation revenue only. We get 2 funding sources from the state. One is the foundation school program, the other one is the available school program. And so those are the 2. And so you can see, based on our data, if we didn't have the state helping us, you're almost looking at an $8 million loss just in the tier 1 and tier 2 that we looked at previously. Something interesting that happened to us, not only did the state help us and create this targeted percentage rate, the state went out and there's about 200 districts that got ESSER funds added to their budgets because the state is having to make up for equity. And so we actually got a line item, and this is probably a one-time deal for us in the state budget that they're sending us of $1.9 million. And so this is really going to help us deal with this year's deficit. And so at the end of the day, that puts us about $83 million just in the foundation school payment. Going down here, the 2 different budgets that we get from the state, you can still see based on the proposed budget, and I'm just going to use this column versus the last column where we're tracking now, because this data is no longer relevant. The total foundation revenue that I was expecting was about 90 million, 90.6 million. And right now, based on the new influx of funds and the change to the percentage rate, it's 85.6. So the difference roughly is 5 million. Well, if you remember, it was 10 million like just a month ago. So this is a big deal because 10 million versus 5 million is it's still not great, but it's a lot better than previously. And this doesn't entail that if we have great 6 weeks here and this rate goes up, right? The percentage rates can go up, that will add more revenue. So it also can go down. So it could have a reverse effect as well. So right now, this last 6 weeks will change this number that we're seeing here. Questions on this piece?
When you say we have to be more mindful, what do you mean by that? I mean, when you say we have to be more mindful.
The mindful of the future budgets and what we do moving forward, just so that understand. And I was talking about settle up because I didn't want the board to think that this year fiscally we were going to be in trouble with this year's budget. So we're still going to employ all the strategies to make sure we don't have a deficit budget, so that next year when the state says, hey, we overpaid you, we're taking that money away from you next year. So I still want to put in the strategies to make sure that if they overpay us for 5 million, that I have that 5 million set aside next year to fill that gap. That's the piece that's going to be key to watch this. And so, just to give you an update of where we're at, the 3 buckets of funds that are available for us to deal with the $5 million deficit, you have ESSER 2 funds and you have ESSER 3, then obviously we have our fund balance. If we didn't have ESSER funds, it'd be fund balance. So it's like most districts before they had deficit budgets, they use fund balance to cover it. But right now, we do have ESSER. So here's the beginning balances, and currently this is what we have left. So ESSER funds are still sitting pretty strong. We're gonna start really drawing those down. I'm gonna show you how we're doing that, because that's the first bucket we really get to spend. And then we have ESSER 3 funds. We had 31 million, but we've done a lot of things actually, including retentions and other different items and staffing and the current teachers that we've added. So that's drawn down to about 19 million. So we still have quite a good amount in our buckets to use to deal with this situation. The biggest difference, and I'll be full transparency, I said here in front of the board when we adopted the budget, not knowing what our ADA was going to be, and the idea was that we added staff that's on top. So we added 47 teachers. And the plan was, through attrition or through fund balance, that we maintain those for past the 3 years of the ESSER funds. And the idea was that we were able to use ESSER funds to put money in the fund balance, so year 4 and 5 for these teachers, we could pay for them. Based on deficits, that doesn't look, the plan is kind of like, I'm gonna say it's out the window, but right now, instead of adding money to fund balance, I'm trying to make sure we don't take money from fund balance. So it's a different plan now. We've gone from, let's put money into fund balance with ESSER funds, so we can pay for year 4 and 5, to making sure that we don't have to get rid of what we have, and make sure that we don't have to use fund balance for this. So it has slightly changed based on this year. This could just be a year of anomalies, because if the pandemic goes away, we get all our students back, we get our attendance rate back up, next year's budget could be a lot more sound. But at the same time, going into next year's budget is very unpredictable. And so that's...
Are you gonna anticipate next year's budget based on this year, then you're gonna be very conservative?
The idea is I'm gonna take enrollment, and then I'm gonna, it's basically, so we're tracking an 88% percentage rate. And the question is, do I use that, or do I use a 90, or do I use 93 back to where we were? So it's kind of like, but I don't think anybody here can predict if there's gonna be another strain, multiple strains, and so it's really, I haven't really decided, and maybe it's gonna be sitting down with our senior leadership, and maybe you all deciding what that actually should be. Because I have to pick some kind of percentage rate, and it could be in between, and normally we'd be more conservative so that we don't overspend. But at the same time, I know that we're dealing with staffing, and we're dealing with compensation, and we're dealing with budgets that are increasing, and so the budget has to give and take somewhere. So it's either, at the end of the day, if our budget's in a deficit, these are our buckets we go to get through the pandemic. That's what they're there for. Even our fund balances for rainy days. The idea is that somehow we get out of that in the next 2 to 3 years, even 4 years, because sooner or later, your funds are gone that you have in your back pocket, and then your fund balance gets strained like a lot of districts. And there's a lot of negative impacts in not having a strong fund balance, and it's always good to have fund balance, but when you start going out for bonds and you start having credit ratings and you're trying to do things those are the most important things that creditors and bond underwriters and bonds and having capacity, they take into account.
Brandon, are all the other school districts in a similar situation?
I would assume every school district that, especially that depends on the state aid, districts that are, and so this is, I don't want to jump into equity too much, but if you are predominantly tax-based, you only get in trouble if your people aren't paying their taxes.
Right.
If you're predominantly being funded by the state because of ADA, we're going to get hit more effectively by having, because we're getting paid based on students more than we are on taxpayers.
Correct.
The taxpayers pay about 35 to 40% of the bill, where other districts it's almost 80 to 85%. Every district's still going to be impacted by attendance. And some districts have great attendance rates, and they don't even need the target percentage rate, but we're not one of those.
Do you think that the state is this it? Or do you think the state is still working on ways to mitigate the impact?
To be honest, the only way they fix this problem on attendance is they change the way they do budgets and they base it on enrollment. So.
Is there any talk about that?
I mean,
I mean, there's
there's
always,
there's grassroots movement.
there's always
legislators.
talk, but has it gotten
maybe-
serious consideration?
There's legislators, I mean, there's only like 5 states in the whole United States that base it
Do
off this
that.
kind of farm.
This formula methodology, according to the commissioner, is the only way without trying to go to get legislative action. that
Right.
we could do something to help schools, according to his meeting with in Texas. I think they're trying to help as much as they can. I think their philosophy is intercede as little as possible, but also to make sure schools can continue through the pandemic on the other side.
Do you-
I don't think they're gonna come back unless it happens with the 5th and 6th week.
Yeah.
We're all gonna be on our own. To answer your question, I don't know of one district who hasn't, or there's 2 locally because of the fast growth areas. But the rest of us have all experienced certain levels of enrollment loss, and that's throughout the state of Texas. So there's about 300,000 students, I think, that's trying to count for.
That we're missing.
Where they going with their workforce or where they're at.
To talk about enrollment, so we base staffing on enrollment, we base basically budgets on enrollment.
Yeah.
And so when we predict that we're gonna have 600 kids at Southwest Elementary and we only have 500, we've overstaffed. So now, once we get into the year, there's nowhere to put teachers, so you have
Right.
to use them. So it's a double whammy when you have your enrollment declining, but also when your attendance rates lower based on, because you're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
So your expenditures are still here, but your revenue's here. And I think it's an anomaly right now for us because, like everybody else, the pandemic. And right now we're going through staffing, and we're gonna have to really look at staffing in our model to make sure that we're not overstaffing.
Do you think we have any fixed expenditures that we can like streamline to where, to help us with the cut, like to help with this situation?
Well, what we're doing right now, and I'm going to show you right now, so when we talk about fixed expenditures, I mean, 85% of our budget's staff. So
Yeah.
it's salary, staff, it's people. The only way you put a dent in a huge budget is to decrease that. But you can cut 100 positions, but then you give a 3% raise and
Yeah, you still,
you didn't do anything to the budget. What we're looking at doing, and this is what that's why I'm saying as far as ESSER funds, is finding a way to use ESSER funds to fix some of these fixed costs that we have. Like, so our substitute budget. Our budget's about a $1.3 million for subs all through the year. So we're gonna spend that out, general fund, and then we're gonna reclass that to ESSER 2. So ESSER 2 is gonna pay for all our subs. And for the next 2 years, to take that away from the general fund, from the impact on the general fund. So these are the examples that so far we've implemented. The first one there is we basically reclassed every director, coordinator, executive director to ESSER 2 to help with that $5 million deficit. Because I got to make up $5 million somewhere. So we reclassed, starting in January, every position that's in, that's like a central office position, pretty much. That's not funded already by federal funds. Then we're going to, when we get to the summer, we're going to reclass all the substitute budgets across all the campuses. Because this year, their budgets, just like last year, we went through COVID, they had a lot of people in and out, so their budgets are extremely inflated. So we're going to reclass all that, and that's actually in the plan. Both of these are in the plan to help deal with operations, help deal with substitutes.
is there any way we could figure out, like, if, say we got different buckets, like tier, what is it called? Or I can't remember the term right now, but I'm sorry. But, what was that? Well, where the funds, we have different buckets to pay teachers out, right?
Yes.
And did those different buckets, I wanted to make, if we're paying 30,000 for half of a teacher and then add another 30,000 from another bucket, are we making sure that those are all streamlined to where we're, okay, now we have freed up some money somewhere and?
Correct. So here's our model, and I probably should go through the staffing model, is at every campus, we try to staff like elementaries. We're 22 to 1 district. So we have a model that, okay, we're gonna staff 22 to 1 in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. And so we build that, so yeah, I skipped a couple grades, I was just using.
It's kinder, but not fifth.
Yeah, not fifth, yeah. Kinder through fourth grade is 22 to 1. And so we build a model. And so we have, let's say we have 60 students in third grade, well, it's pretty much three teachers. And so we start there, and then we do fifth grade, 1 to 24, because we can add more students there, and then we do the middle schools that way. And then, comp ed funds, and that's the equity piece. So a campus gets comp ed funds based on the needs of their students. So if they're at risk, if they have certain economically disadvantaged needs, so then that campus will get another bucket of funds, and they're not all equal, because it's not supposed to be. And some campus may get more and is able to add extra staff. But that staff can't be a regular teacher. It has to be an interventionist. It has to be somebody working with kids that meet those needs.
Yeah.
So I can't move those funds and pay for more teachers.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, I can move them to pay for like an interventionist teacher or what do they call the teachers in high school? I don't want to call it resource teacher. It's more of like where they have their retesters,
Recovery of credit.
recovery of credit. So they can use those funds for that, and also titles. We have Title I funds. And
Yeah, that's where it was going. Title
Yeah,
I,
Title I.
Title 11, Title,
Correct.
those title funds, that's where I was trying to get to, where it was like, when those title funds are equal to what, say, a teacher is, and not knowing, oh, it's a therapist, like you said, specialty, say it's a therapy, but then we could compensate for one teacher being they only have one class and teaching one class at a secondary level to where but the rest of the time we're compensating from the bucket for therapists for this,
What we run into is because we have to have a model, because we're all Title I schools and we have to be comparable. So we have to make sure that this campus, we pretty much staff it based on some kind of methodology. And then any extra funds they have, we have to give to that campus, and they're the only ones who can use it. So I can't take money and give it to this campus,
Yeah.
and even staff, I can't say, well, this staff member needs to go over here now, because we have to be a methodology, because we're all Title I schools. That's different from some campuses that are on Title I. Some campuses, you can add more staff, and they don't have to run into any comparability issues. So yeah, the only way we're doing some of that is through ESSER. We've added staff at every campus, and that's extra funds, and they don't have to be, they could be anything. We wanted them to be teachers. We wanted to give the campuses more teachers. We kind of mandated that, except for the high schools added counselors. But we knew that they needed more teachers to deal with the things that are going on. And so that's the only place we've been able to add extra. There's some criteria on it. So, and then the last one, summer school. We'll probably have a pretty heavy summer school this year. We even spent about $1 million right now. I'm projecting at ESSER2 to spend about $750,000. That'll probably go up. But that's because we're going to have a pretty robust summer school because of House Bill 4545. But we'll fund every teacher, every aide, any person that's working summer school. And there's some other smaller groups that we might fund. And so we will continue to look at ESSER2 and ESSER3 and on how we can make up the deficit. So right now, we probably have about $4 million covered out of the $5 million deficit. And like I said before, this is to cover the deficit. This was supposed to be the plan to put $5 million in the fund balance to pay for those teachers that we've added. So consideration for next year. So I wanted to give you the great news that the deficit's cut in half. It was 10 million, now it's 5, which is great. And we're using our funds to try to mitigate that. But then going into next year, what is our plan? So currently right now we have 49 teachers, or it's 46 teachers and 3 counselors that we're funding out of ESSER3. And those positions we gave to them last year, and we told them they're going to help us get us through the pandemic. And then the plan, hopefully year 4 and 5, we could maybe cover those, because at some point, that's the fiscal cliff. I mean, it's roughly $4.3 million that we'll have to add to our books to keep. And right now, that strategy, I don't think is on the table. So we need to do a different strategy. And so we've been meeting and talking to principals. We're about to go through staffing, and we're asking every elementary principal, they're going to have to lose 1 this year. It's either to lose 1 this year or you lose 2 next year. So instead of taking 2 away in 1 year, you take 1 through attrition over time, so they don't feel the impact so much. And that's a strategy we're going to employ to deal with that, because the idea was really to help them to get back on their feet this year, help them next year. And so we're not going to take them all away, but strategically take those away until, obviously the money's going to go away, but then we don't have that burden on the budget.
We have the virtual program.
Right.
Correct. Correct. And yeah, because most of those ESSER positions were used to help with that virtual program that we were using.
Oh,
So a lot of elementaries had to use that position anyway, and since we're not doing that, that will help, help them on campus, not have to deal with that other scenario. The same thing, I've already talked about the aquatic center, so I mean, we're going to basically almost add $1 million just to open that facility next year. We met with special ed. They have and they'll probably roll this out at a different time. But there's some restructuring happening, and so there's gonna be needed, some positions added to special ed. They're needed, and there's no way around it. So right now, it's about 300,000, it could go up, just based on the model that they're gonna create. And then at CAST, we were receiving some money from HEB over time, and so that's over with now. This was our last year of that. They paid for 2 positions that they currently have at CAST, and then it was the teachers get a stipend that was paid for this grant. That's all gonna go away, so that will have to impact our budget if we continue those positions and continue those stipends for those teachers. And then the Penguin Project, I had this on there last time, but we're gonna fund that at ESSER. So that should be funded, it shouldn't impact general fund. It may here and there, it may a little bit, but not too much. And then the Greenwald Fine Arts Academy, it's a very little budget item at this point, kind of like Getting Code, but there will be an ask. I know we're working right now on repurposing all our libraries with some upgraded furniture. And so I know that they're gonna work, maybe doing something like we did with Getting Code, how we gave them 200,000 so they can buy new furniture, kind of make it look like an academy. And so we will bring that back to y'all. That won't be in the budget, that'll be a fund balance item. And then the last one, depending on what we need to do and what the market looks like and what other districts, is the compensation. And that's usually always the biggest driver of the budget to balance. And so I always put it up there, 2 to 3% raise across the district is $3 million added to our budget, based on all our positions and everything. That's pretty good and consistent. And so we'll get to that point once we start hearing what everybody else is doing. We'll start comparing models. We want to be competitive. We want to make sure that our teachers and staff are taken care of. At the same time, we also have to be mindful that we're in a deficit budget and how much can we really do. The last couple pages, I'll leave with you, but it's kind of what we're doing district-wide. We start staffing next week with elementaries, and we'll move to middle schools, and high schools are a lot bigger, and it takes a little more time to build. And then we'll start doing campus budgets. We'll start projecting revenue, which will probably be the most difficult thing to do. I've already tried to run different ideas of what that's going to look like. Easy really have good data. I don't really have good data, so it's going to be even a bigger guessing game. And then every month I'll start coming back to you just like this and give y'all updates. Hopefully around June or July, probably July, we'll adopt a compensation plan. And then in August, the last part of August is our big month, is where we adopt the budget, the tax rate. We'll get certified. I'll get preliminary values at the end of this month, and then I'll get certified values. We'll see what property value growth we have in July. That helps drive the tax rate. It also drives our budget. The richer our tax, it's called richer. The higher our appraised value goes, the less state funding we get, so the less we have to deal with the ADA thing. But just because your values go doesn't mean you get more money.
Yeah.
They just take more away. From
Different
you.
way of
They
getting
balance
it, different way
balance
of
it out.
getting it.
Yeah, yes, sir. Questions for me?
With the realtors and developers we brought in, is there any way of getting back with those guys to see how many they think by the end of summer they'll all have closed to kind of guesstimate how many more students?
Correct.
will
Well,
come
so what we have is, every year we do a demographic study.
Mhm.
So we have a demographer that's gonna start doing all that for us. So he'll start reaching out to all of them and start taking pictures of everything. And he'll see all the closings we had in our neighborhoods versus how many houses are gonna come on the market. And he'll start putting numbers to it, like what do we expect that's gonna look like. I could actually bring numbers out from what he's done in the past. And I will say the areas that we're gonna see the most growth is gonna be like our Spicewood area.
Mhm. That's-
And so on this model, Spicewood, in 10 years, will be at 1,500 kids if we don't do something in that area.
Well, I know just right there, even on Watson, they got a bunch of that's predicted to be done by the summer. That's why I was
The
wondering.
balance we'll have to watch is where we see growth in our district and all district spaces, you see less growth in other parts of it.
Mhm.
So as enrollment's going down here, you got enrollment's going here, what is our strategy to deal with that?
Yeah.
And that's where we bring in the demographic study, and he reaches out to all those developers, and try to figure out how many houses you're gonna put in the
Yeah.
monthly, what is it gonna look like next year? So probably around June we'll have that,
Okay.
and that'll be good data to bring out. I plan on bringing that to you all, but also the growth and planning committee.
Is there any people that could help you to where they could help you lean out the budget or anything like that, to help you do stuff like that?
Say it again?
To lean out the budget, to lean it, like to make sure we're functioning within the lean process.
I'm sure there is. So I work with a consultant, especially on the tax and looking at our, all our indicators, all our demographics, and they work with me to like kind of just make sure that I'm doing it, not compared to theirs. Like within our district, like you're talking about, like expenditure side?
Well, because because you say you pulled the data and the data, because you said it's old data, so where can we get like perceivable data where the perceivable is gonna help you estimate that?
So the biggest piece will be the demographic study. So that person will actually give us an idea of what enrollment will look like. Now, the biggest caveat is ADA, it's the attendance. When attendance is unpredictable, that's the part where I can kind of predict close where enrollment is. Like last year, I think we were gonna be at 13.4, and we're at 13.3. So enrollment is not far off from what we thought we were gonna be enrollment-wise in the budget, especially through staffing. But when your attendance rate, when I was thinking we were gonna be at like the 94%, and we were gonna get 12,488, it's at 11.2. The attendance is the big driver of that. And that's the thing, that we thought we were gonna have 2 strains in a row of COVID, especially starting the school year, and we had our virtual program that ran longer than it was gonna run. And then we had January, you got hit hard in the 3rd and 4th, 6 weeks on attendance. The idea would be is, I just would say, is the pandemic over, is it not? That would be, in the pandemic, we feel like there's gonna be more strains, it's gonna hit us again, we need to take it into account on our attendance. That'd be something.
But if we,
Education in Texas is based on projections, those are the rears.
and the thing is with, like, say you have those 12,000, like you predicted the 13,000 of the people, have you find out what's causing, besides the COVID issues, being that it was attendance drop, is there anything else that's causing them to not come to school or to the attendance to drop? That we can try to figure out, like maybe I said, why are you not coming to school? Like, what is it because of the economics, or is it because I'm keeping my son at home because I need him help or something like that?
The biggest driver, I would say, was COVID for the most part. Like, and you can see the trends in all campuses, all enrollments, all of ADA average daily attendance is down. But then even in the past, and I'm not going to speak because there's different groups that deal with that, is there certain campuses that we've always struggled with having really good attendance. And I think coming out of the pandemic, when kids were home doing like kind of on their own, virtual, like all of our kids were at that point, it's been a harder transition to be like at school all the time. I can't really guess.
AG neighborhoods, obviously, we have 3 campuses that are in AG neighborhoods and more mature neighborhoods that runs it. Some parents are making really childhood education decisions that are outside. There's more opportunity, pre-K for SA, charter expansion. We've had charters come into our zip code in the last 3 years where we've had 0 any year before that. So there's options, and parents are looking for choices and making choices. And what we're seeing here is that we experience that on the front side, but by the time students are in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, the majority of them are coming back.
You know, and I found out this past weekend, there's actually a couple of companies out there that are literally getting hired by districts to recruit your students back from charter schools and
Yeah,
other
that's,
options.
I heard about that.
Yeah, so they're, and they get, paid dependent on how many kids they bring you back. So it may be something we look into.
A couple of days ago, there was 2 IDEA teachers walking down my street, knocking on doors.
That's,
Like, they're literally
that's
recruiting.
part of their contract.
They're
That's part of their contract.
door to door.
They are required to recruit
To
so
keep their
many
job.
children per year.
Keep their job, they have to do.
No, that's something that I would want my teachers to do, but I mean, I wouldn't want them to go recruit. I would have someone else doing it for us, but.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have unless y'all have more questions. I'll be back next month to give you more of an update where we're at. Have 6 weeks data probably for the 5th 6 weeks and start plugging away. And we're currently working through next year's budget. So we're a little preliminary right now. We'll do staffing and campus budgets, work on revenue, and give y'all an update next month.
Thank you, Brandon.
All right,
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Brandon?
and now for customer service audit.
Yes, sir. That item's how we receive people and welcome people and make people feel when they're in our district, on our campus, within departments, offices, is very important. It's something I think that we've always tried to make sure it's a point of pride or an opportunity for growth or meet whatever challenges we have, get on. We know people remember how we make them feel, and so we've done things within our district, but this year we decided to kind of get a different perspective and have someone come in and assess what that looks like in Southwest ISD, that help us kind of create a path forward. So Jesse Garcia is really taking the bull by the horns on this, and he has actually done presentations in San Marcos for TEA, with TEA staff on customer service issues. And so we did a big audit, and Jesse led it, he's done a presentation. Our goal today, our objective today is to give the board members some high-level kind of feedback that we received. We have specific reports that we're gonna speak directly to principals and campuses and use recommendations to build professional development opportunity for our staff. But we're gonna try to keep this high level, just give the board an idea of what took place, what we learned, and where we're going. So, Jesse?
Thank you, board members, senior staff. I've left a folder there in front of everyone that's got the packets, pieces of information. And so the actual report that I received from the audit is a little over 200 pages. So I kind of portioned off some pieces and kind of culminated some pieces, I guess, kind of summarized them together so that we could just go through and kind of look at some of these high-level pieces. But just to back up a little bit, in the fall, the American Association of School Customer Service approached us about looking at a way to quantify the customer service experience at Southwest ISD. And so we know how important data is, and we all love to look at data, and it really kind of helps us make changes where we need to make changes, make improvements, or in some places look at some things a little bit more closely. So we knew that this was something important that we wanted to try. So we brought this to the principals. We shared it during our district leadership meeting. We let them know that, hey, look, this group is going to be coming. It's probably going to be in December and January. Put your best foot forward. When this group comes, we really want to get a snapshot of what customer service and that experience here at Southwest ISD looks like. So just to kind of give you an idea of what their process looks like, they basically do 4 pieces to this audit. Now, again, I want to preface this by this is kind of a one-day, one-time snapshot of what our campuses look like. But you get 1 site visit, you get 2 phone calls, and you get 1 email. The email itself is not scored, and that's a whole other piece of the report by itself with the actual responses. But the site visit and the 2 phone calls are scored. And so that's the bulk of their scores. When we get to that, you're going to be able to see how they came to come up with that composite score. So when they come, they basically generate this report. And this report is based on the site phone call observations. They do what's called kind of a curb appeal type thing, where they kind of look at our facilities. What does the parking lot look like? What does the office look like? What does the fencing, the signage look like? They make some recommendations, and it gives a kind of a summary of what we did. Those are the 4 pieces that are located in your folder. And so I want to give you kind of an overview of what we found. And so as you read through this, and so the very first part has the actual site visit observations, and you can read through the specifics that are in there and actually tell you some of the recommendations that they're making based on these site visits that they made, some of the areas that stood out to them as far as some things that we thought, all right, here's some places that we might be able to do some work in.
Wow.
And this is just on the visits themselves. Now, the actual report has the word-for-word conversations that they had with every frontliner that they met at our campuses. That kind of gives you a little bit more insight to what those interactions look like on campus. But overall, the takeaways were, we probably need some revision of our enrollment parameters, how we do that, what that looks like. And we say that because the bulk of the visits that were done, site visits to the campus, were enrollment questions. You would have someone who would walk into a campus. It could be someone who spoke only Spanish. It could be a same-sex couple. Or it could just be a traditional couple. They would walk in basically saying, look, we're interested in enrolling in our students here at Southwest ISD. And then the conversation would kind of take place from there. And so how did our folks manage that conversation? What resources did they offer? Basically, how did they tend to the needs of the people who came in? So our enrollment parameters, we may have to go back and kind of look at how we do some of that. Now that we're changing, we do have a lot of areas where we border, like if you come down 1604 on this side over here, Lucky Ranch, there's a couple of streets that belong to Southwest ISD, but the rest of the subdivision technically belongs to Medina Valley. So we do have some people who are like, hey, we'd rather stay here at Southwest ISD and not go to Medina Valley because it's closer to us. We have the same situation when you get over on the South End side as well too, and the Somerset side as well. And so maybe just looking at that and what is the message that our folks are giving when people actually come onto our sites. We also found it probably would help to have an on-site registration place. Oftentimes we were referring people back to the website to go enroll their students. It would probably help if we could cut out a piece in our front offices so that the staff could help someone kind of walk them through that registration process now that they can go through and do everything online, and at least capture them enough so that when they get here, we don't lose them, right? So they can always come back and upload those documents later, but at least we get that initial registration done with them, and we're not missing them when they come out. And so we've seen the development. Mr. Carrillo, I know you asked about closings. We started working with the realtors and the home builders. We do these welcoming packages. We've gone from about 20 closings a month in the last 3 months to 40 to about 60 closings this month. And so you can see with those subdivisions popping up, those closings are getting big. And the other thing we found out is roughly 2/3 of most of the people who are coming here, they're not from San Antonio. They're not from Texas. They're coming to us from the Northwest, they're coming to us from the West Coast, the Northeast, or north of Texas. So they don't know anything about Southwest ISD. They really, truly are someone who just, they come to the neighborhood, they Google it when they get here, they find out where the campus is, they go to the campus, and they start asking questions. So now more than ever, that first, impression that we give to these folks, the first conversation that we have with them is so important. I was at a subdivision the other day. There was 3 couples who came down. All of them were from the Microsoft area. Those of you guys who are familiar up there in the Northwest who work for Microsoft, they're all allowed to work remotely. So of course the cost of living up there is really high, so they moved down here to San Antonio, much lower cost of living. Young families, they don't have to go to the office itself, but they're coming to us from Washington State. They're coming to us from Northern California. They don't know anything about Southwest ISD, so they really are dependent on how our folks treat them when they walk in. What does our website look like when they log into it, when they get onto the actual site, and what the resources have. So these visits really kind of help us kind of craft some of the changes that we're probably gonna need to make. One of the other pieces we found out is our folks really need that elevator speech. And speaking to Ms. Collier, we're gonna be working on what is that speech that you give them, all right? Hey, instead of, where do you live, and is it this street or is it that street? Hey, welcome to Southwest ISD. Did you know that we are, that we have a pre-K for all program and it's free? Did you know that our CTE program offers the industry certifications in all of these different areas? Did you know that our kids qualify for the Alamo Promise, that they can get basically 3 years or an associate's degree at any community college? Those are some really big selling points for our community and for the people who are moving here. I know when we have the conversations with the home builders and the realtors, as soon as they find out, they put that down in their 3 bullets, they call it. And that's the first thing that they tell residents who are about to move into our area. And so that we know that that's something that's really key. So we've got to work with our folks. They haven't had to do it before. And really our folks in the office now are really our biggest salesmen. So when folks come in, we really need them to be really good about giving that message right away and not allowing them. There's a small business Saturday happening in my neighborhood at Cinco Lakes. Idea Public Schools is going to be one of the tables that's there. Everyone else is selling, earrings and little things, and here's going to be Idea with a table. So I already told you that we're going to go put a table next to them, right, so that we can sit there and do some recruiting for Southwest ISD. Because gosh darn it, let these guys just come into the neighborhood to be able to do that. So we want to make sure that we're aware of some of those things, but we also want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward. Now, as far as the site itself, just the physical site itself, they did recommend that kind of first impression. Some of our offices don't have a lot of these pictures and whatnot, where we have students kind of in action doing things on campus. They said that really kind of helps build that school setting when folks walks in. So that was definitely another recommendation that they had for us. More directional signage in some places like Hastem. It's a little hard to find the front of the school. Southwest High School has multiple entrances, which is that main entrance that we need to get to. And so more signage that could help with that. We definitely probably need to freshen up our curb appeal, when it comes to signs in the parking lot, banners that we have hanging on the fences, floor markings for any type of parking or directional signage that tells our folks which way to go or where to park. And then, of course, the last part is they had a hard time in some places kind of finding some standard visitors parking areas. And so you go to one campus that has none, you go to one campus that has 8. So we probably need to standardize that a little bit more so that when folks come, that we definitely are giving the right message. And that is, we welcome you from the moment you park that car here, the moment you get on our website, the moment you make that phone call, going forward. And, we've got to grab and hold them once we do that. Now, all of these recommendations made, the AASCA did recognize that although we've got some improvements to make, just like everyone else, we are definitely far ahead of a lot of school districts, kind of the same size with the same amount of students as we are. So we're doing some things well, but there definitely is some areas that we could improve on. And so just some overall, if you look at that very last sheet there, on the very last pack there, you can see some scores. These were the composite scores that were given to us by the actual company itself. And so they take the site visit, they take the 2 phone calls, do an average of those 2, then they put those 2 scores together to make a composite. That composite score kind of gives them an overall rating. And you can see the
Wow.
3 campuses that really stood out. And again, this is one time, one day, one snapshot in kind of the life of what's going on. We also recognize that in December, if you guys remember, in January, we had another hard hit with COVID, and so our folks were still kind of a little bit leery to let folks in the building. And so that we know that that's a variable in all of this as well too. And then, of course, we have some scores here with our couple of our other campuses where we feel like we might be able to make some improvements on these. And none of these improvements that you'll see in the report or that you'll read are anything that's going to take a long amount of time for us to do. They're all things that I think we can get some really quick fixes to, grab some of that low-hanging fruit, and make some changes so that our folks are able to make some adjustments sooner rather than later. And of course, this is the enrollment season, right? We really want to be aware of these things. This group is coming on April the 20th to do the second day of professional development with our frontliners. Some of these pieces will be incorporated into that training kind of as a general message to everyone as we go into the enrollment season, which will be the rest of May, the summer, and of course, when we get back in August. Now, our next steps, we recognize there's a lot of different places that we can put this, but we do definitely need to improve our branding as a district. We've got to diversify our marketing. So we do a lot of things digitally, but we need to go back to some of our grassroots, some of the paper things that we have to put out there, some of the signage that we kind of take for granted that we've had there in the past. Clean that stuff up, get it back out there, rebranded. We also need to kind of look at that enrollment process. How can we make things a little bit easier for parents? Can we do some things to just grab them when they first come into our buildings? And then later we can follow up with some, hey, send these documents later, but at least we grab them the moment they step in our building. It's like a salesman when you go buy a car, right? They don't want to let you leave once you come in and look at that vehicle, because they know if you leave, you're going to go look at a vehicle somewhere else, right? And see if you can get a better deal. But we don't want them to leave. We want them to stay here once they get here. And if even we just kind of grab you with this first offer right here, we'll close the deal with them later, and we'll get the rest of that documentation. But at least we grab them when they're on site with us. We really need to look at our campuses and really kind of get them to own this customer service piece. It really should be something that everyone on the campus is trained on. Everyone should know that elevator speech. Everyone should know kind of what that selling point is for the campus based on some of the things that we do. And then there's a lot of things that the campuses do locally that are great selling points as well too. But they've really got to own that piece to share that with folks when they come in. We're going to continue that professional development with all of our frontliners. We would like to add this to the administrative retreat this summer. And of course, it needs to be a thread in all of our leadership meetings going forward, just so that folks are aware of it. The idea is to do this again next year. Now that we've baselined ourselves and got a calibration of kind of where we're at, we do it again next year and then take a look at, are we making improvement? In some places, are we staying the same? What are some of the things that we did that really work? And what are some of the things that we need to do to continue to improve? So that's kind of the overview of what our visit with the American Association for School Customer Service looks like.
Some of this seems like it could be turned around a little bit quick with
It
the
can.
customer service and with the rebrand, like helping us branding of our people. But you're right, I see some of the, I guess the data that we're pulling from this, it's kind of like, I would like to look at if they do something with, I hate that word idea, because we get a lot of kids losing, and especially where I know where we live, we have like a lot of people in that area.
Right.
And the reason why is because they grab them first. And then it's like, how did they get to them first? Like, how did we miss out on that opportunity to hold in on that big skill?
Right. And so part of that too, Mr. Bernal, is that's why we've been working with the home builders. So every resident that comes in now gets a little bag that says, hey, welcome to Southwest ISD. Here's a little bit of swag from the district. In there is also our registration information, so that they grab that and hopefully we're the first person they hit. As they're going through that process, the home builders will also call us as well too. Hey, we've got a family here from Baltimore that's moving in. They got questions about the schools. We got a family over here from Los Angeles. They're going to move in. They've got 3 kids. How do they put them at 3 different schools? How does that work with us? So we field a lot of those questions, and it's not hard to do. But you have that constant, like, the charter schools who constantly layer in their messaging, whether it's in signage or deliveries or.
Do you think their service, as soon as they walk through that door, because if we see their service numbers for our walk-in, they're kind of low, but at the same time, are they at a 90 percentile to keep, like, where their service is, like, and what are they telling their people to, because once you walk into that print, you feel like, oh, you're going to want to stay.
Well,
And when you come, like some of our schools, when you walk in, feel, oh, because I walk into Southwest and I feel, oh.
I mean, I think most of it with the idea is that walking door to door, they're getting them at the door as soon as they see them moving in, before they even get to the school, because most of the schools that I've walked in, idea is pretty much the same layout as we had. But it's just, like you said, used car salesmen, once they're getting to them first, they're keeping them without letting them go and making sure they sign them up.
Just-
But what about, like you said, updating that website and getting that process easier for the people that are talking from out of state, but also setting up a workstation or laptop or something, that way, even if we had to move them into a conference room when they get in, and having somebody that can step aside and talk to them and walk them through and get them.
We just met, yesterday, what day is today, Wednesday, Monday. We just met Monday, and talked about some of that. So obviously, there's some, whatever these scores are, I mean, we own these scores as
Yes,
much as the
yeah,
campuses do it. So
Yeah.
we've got to provide them some guidance as well too, to be like, hey, look, here's a great opportunity to do this. Here's a place that we can catch them with this. Setting up the computer is a great way to probably catch 3 out of 5 people who are walking back
Now,
out that
you just-
door.
Because some
Right
people
then
need
and
to be, hand walked. and
They do.
walked through, so.
And it's okay to send them home and say, hey, look, you can upload those 3 documents later, or just bring them to us. It's okay, bring us those 4 documents
Yeah.
later, even though today isn't the registration day, right? We still want to take care of people.
But we'll work.
Right now, we
Jesse.
have forward. Yes,
A long time ago, we used to have a customer service training for all the front office personnel at once. Instead of going through, instead of messaging to the principals and then having them message to the front office,
Right.
which then it makes everybody different, a little bit different, right? Because everybody tailors it to their campus. And back then, it was a more basic approach, and certainly we would want to add all these new things now. But I think that might be something we might want to do for a little bit. We did it for a few years and then we stopped doing it, right?
we did.
Yeah,
So
and-
about
and I
5 years
think-
ago,
yeah.
you're right. We had a training that Mr. Baker and myself would do with the front office folks. There. We did that for about 2 years. That 3rd year, we did something different, and then COVID hit. We didn't
Yeah.
really do it the last 2 years. We picked it back up this year with this group. But we've also been attending their trainings to just kind of make sure that we can glean off some of that information that we can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
Okay,
think
good.
this goes back, when, I want to say Dr. Villegas, we did something similar to it. And I think we just need to figure out a way of making it part of our culture, part of our annual,
I like that.
happening, and updating, because obviously what we did back then would not work today for various reasons.
And really, that's
So,
the big message.
and I know it's part of our, we get so involved in so many other things that but here we are again. So it's just something that we're just gonna have to install in ourselves. Yeah, because,
This is good feedback.
I'm like, wow.
It's
And I
really,
think you
And
brought it up
this
before in another
correlates with
meeting.
this.
We said
Like,
that we
this
have
is
a
gonna
website.
help.
Yeah.
This is gonna help
Yeah.
this.
Website
You really take
that had a
this
list of
serious, you're gonna
every-
get this better. So it's like,
Extracurricular,
those
every
two are gonna
other
go
thing.
hand in side by
That
side.
pointing parents to that to show everything that their kid could possibly get into. That idea you had about that with the website, I think that'd be real good.
and I think that, so for us,
Or
I think our
you
biggest
and-
challenge right now is to get over what
I
we've
mean,
done in the past, right?
you're a-
So we
you're
got
a-
so comfortable with kind of folks would walk in and, well, they're gonna come here because they're gonna come here, right? With choice now and that competition out there, that's not a given. And we wanna make sure when they do walk in our building, they know, hey, look, we're giving them the red carpet treatment to every single person who comes in. Not just because we want them to come here. We know this is a great place. We know we do great things. But we want them to come here because they feel it's a great place that has an opportunity for great things for their kids. So we've got to change that culture and that mindset with our folks in the front offices, that when folks come in, as busy as you are, we have got to take the time. When you hear someone say, hey, we're interested in enrolling our students here, we're new, we need to make sure someone's dedicated to taking care of that family. Because that family also goes back to the new neighborhood, and they talk.
Right.
Right? And they talk to 5 families, and that 5 families turns into 15, right? And so that message can get around real quick, and you'll see it on social media and the Nextdoor apps, and one bad experience is really tough to overcome. We'd rather those be positive ones, and they kind of help us preach our own gospel to the rest of the community.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Teen mental health and RSSP survey information.
Yes, sir. We have CNI, Village Providence, and Toledo on. There are 2 surveys that I think one of the teen health survey, mental health, is one, we want to make sure that we put before the board, and there's another survey that Rita's going to cover. We're just bringing these to the board to see if there's any questions, so you guys can see. We're going to employ our policy of when we ask students or parents of students for their minor students to participate in the survey, it's an opt-in process, so we'll follow all our policies, but we just wanted to make sure that you guys had first view, and I know what it is, as an April 5th deadline, right? So it's gonna be pretty quick, I don't know.
Yes, sir, and I did ask for an extension just into consideration that we do have testing this week, and it is citywide, so hoping that they will take our request into consideration, so our students will have the opportunity to take the survey. So we have two organizations in San Antonio that are led by students, and so one is the San Antonio Youth Commission, and the other one is a Project Worth, Teen Ambassadors. And so they both came together to really look at the mental health issues that our students are enduring during this school year. And so they developed a survey, and they would like all our districts to participate. All the results will remain confidential. All they're looking at are the results of the survey and how they can improve the services that are provided citywide. And so they will present these results to the city council and school leadership. So we just want our students to have an opportunity to participate. And also, hopefully they will extend the deadline for our students, since it is, like Dr. Verstev mentioned, it does end April 10th at 11:59 p.m. So that is one survey that we wanted you to be aware of on the student side.
Wow. So this is going out to the students?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a copy of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was in the board packet.
Oh, in the board packet?
Yes.
Page 6, I believe.
So
Oh, yeah,
it's-
no, I don't have it.
So it's about 30
It's okay.
questions.
Chicken, Mary?
She's got one. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. It's about 30 questions, and if you've noticed, students do have the option, I prefer not to ask, is one of the options that you'll see in case they do not feel comfortable in answering that particular question. Do we have any questions about the student survey?
I'm just,
I'm just looking at it right now.
so it's 1, 2, 3, 5 questions? How many questions were there?
30. It's about 30 questions that students would be asked.
Are you gonna give results for our district by itself or only everybody?
As of right now, we're told it's everybody.
Okay, it's not gonna break out
Yes,
for us.
comprehensive of what they can do to provide
Sure.
services across the city.
Sure.
I think as long as it has the I prefer not to answer options for kids so they don't feel stressed like they're being forced to make decisions on some of this stuff, then it should be okay.
And they
And
do,
all the kids, all our schools, or just the city schools are getting this?
I think that district map on there shows it.
all the map, the districts within the map,
The districts within
yes,
the
will be eligible.
Oh, it's in there.
Yeah, it's in here.
Wow.
And it is online, and so students would have a QR code to access the
Yeah,
online
it's all the
service.
surrounding areas.
Do we still have the program where our students can let us know how they're feeling? Right.
Yes. Yes, sir, it's still available.
And they're saying the results will be April 10th, or that's the deadline?
That's the survey goes out.
Yes, the deadline to complete.
Oh, okay, when, did they say they will get results?
No, they did talk, they need some time to disaggregate and
Okay.
just make sure that confidential data is of course masked, and then they would go ahead and meet with the groups to look at the results and plan some recommendations and some services that may be available to our students based on the survey results.
So you're bringing this to the board to vote on? No, or is it something just y'all gotta do and that's,
We're following the policy that's already been established, which is allowing the parents to know about the survey, and they have to opt their student into it.
Oh,
This is
okay.
going out. Just knowing that this is going out to students.
So we're not forcing the students
Yeah.
without getting their permission.
okay.
I think your question is, we're sharing with the board, so you, if y'all have questions, you at least have.
Yeah,
ideas.
that way
So
we'll
when
know.
someone calls you, this is what
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it is available to middle
Really?
school students, but as a committee, we looked and it may be more suitable, more age appropriate for high school students to participate.
Yeah, some of those questions are pretty.
Yeah, but our middle school kids are way more sophisticated than we think they are, right?
Sure.
Yes, they are.
So I wouldn't,
So that could be another opportunity for our middle school students if everybody is in agreement that we would make it available to them, of course, optional for them.
Optional for the parents to
Yes.
choose them on that situation too, right? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes, and it does start at age 12, so our sixth graders will not be included. It would just be for our students 12 and up.
And there's another survey?
Is it full or?
Good afternoon, Mr. Board President, board members, Dr. Verstip and senior staff. So the second survey that we are bringing to the board as an item of information is the survey under TEA. So the Texas Education Agency selected 200 school districts to participate in year 3 of the RSSP, or what's called the Resilient Schools Support Program, as part of the T-Class grant. And so Southwest ISD has been accepted to continue this program, so we are moving into year 3. As part of that grant and part of the work that we continue to do with them, Southwest ISD staff and the majority of us are the executive directors out of CNI that have been meeting with the company Ed Direction on a weekly basis. And we meet with them to determine some priority items and some next steps as we continue to build out the year. And so as part of that goal setting, there is a survey that is going out to teachers and a survey that is going out to parents. It has not gone out yet. It will be going out. That should also be in your board book. And for the teachers, it's a 10-question survey. For the parents, it's a 9-question survey. And that survey has been developed to gather input from both of those groups. And then this data, once we get it back, will be used in the development of our year 3 goals. So as part of that, as we've seen, things change. Sometimes, we hit COVID, we kind of came back to virtual. And then they said they were going to stop virtual, and then they kind of came back and said, well, we're going to go ahead and let you do a piece of remote learning with some parameters around it. So as those things continue to change, the RSSP program and working with Ed Direction, they're very flexible with us, and the plans are very fluid, where we gather this input, we gather this data, and we just match it up to see with what we're doing. Is it aligning? Is it correct? It's not just something that's coming out of CNI and we're saying, this is what we plan to do. They really work with us to make sure that we're meeting all of the district's needs.
Any questions, Wilbur?
I'm sorry, and this is going out to which parents?
It's going to all our parents.
And how are you sending it out to them?
It's going to be done through Qualtrics, so once we get right now it's just an item of information. Once we get the approval to go ahead and send it out, then they send it over to us and we send it to Jesse. We compile it and it goes out through Qualtrics.
What's Ultra?
It's our survey system, but
It's
it'll
our
go through
survey
Remind.
system.
Can we,
But it goes through Remind?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and not all parents have Remind, or
We'll
is
post-
it only the parents that have Remind that are gonna get it, or how do you get other parents to
So
get
we'll
it?
post it in all different areas. We'll
Social
post
media?
it- Yeah, social media. We'll post it also under each campus website, the district website, and if need be, then we also send it home in paper format.
And for how long will the survey be out?
We will be getting the results back in May, so it should be about a month-long process that we give them time, and as we go, we'll check to see how many responses we have gotten back.
On
and then we
social
can also
media,
send
can we make
reminders.
sure that it posts like every day or every other day, not just one time and then that's it, right?
Yes, we can
'Cause-
definitely get with the team and make sure
and when
that we do
when the
that.
post comes out, can we make it sure that we have, like, something that can, like, people don't respond to social media by just like, oh, it's gonna be a survey, or like, explain to them what they're trying to do, what we're trying to do for them, in relevance to, we have to put a picture or something to hone in on the skill where they have to, like, oh, what is this?
To draw them in.
Draw
Yes,
them in,
definitely.
like.
We'll definitely talk to Roger's team and Jenny's team to make sure we have some sort of visual that grabs their attention.
Yeah, especially when it comes to survey, because a survey could be like just, I've seen some of the ones in the past where it's just one little thing, and I was like,
The
wait, that was a survey?
A link.
It was just like, and then it was the SR one, it would look like the SR phone one too, it was like, is that a survey? Like, people didn't even know it was a survey until they had to click on it. But
Yes.
if we have something that's branding our survey, they click on it and say, oh, they're asking for us to.
Mhm. They want my feedback, right? So-
Yes, definitely, we can.
Like, I think
definitely
it
do
said, we want you to participate in our biggest survey ever, you know?
that. We can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Dr. Verstiff, do we have closed session today? A need for closed session today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? You have your one, all right, your calendar?
The event calendar is coming around, so we keep updating it. Ask everyone to remain flexible as we get in further into April and beginning of May. If a lot of events.
Yeah.
That's it, sir.
Anyone on the board have any questions, final questions?
I just want to give a big shout out to Indian Creek, whose customer service is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're finding out what the top three are the top three, right, Justin?
Yeah, and McCullough, don't forget McCullough.
Okay. With that said, at 12:50,